Hey, and welcome everybody to this week's edition of the Life and Legacy Show, sponsored by the Sechler Law Firm in Cranberry Township, where great families make great estate plans. My name is Tim Sechler. I am your host on this show for about a half an hour today, and we do this show to get you the information that I think you need to know in order to make a great estate plan. I feel like way too many people fail to do estate planning. There's something like more than half of U.S. adults have not done any estate planning. So many people are spending way more time planning family vacations than planning how to manage their family and their money should something happen. And I think a lot of that is confusion. I think a lot of the reason that people don't take the time to do planning is they don't really understand their options. And so what I want to teach you is the things that you can do to not only just do a plan, but to do a really good plan for your family. And so we do some legal technical on the show. We just do some interest. And I am doing this radio show for the Saturday following Thanksgiving. And this is an interesting time of the year for an elder law practice, because this time of the year we get to spend a whole bunch of time with our family members and maybe some family members whom we have not seen for a while. And we always see an uptick in calls this time of year from adult children who are now spending some time with their parents, more time than usual, and are noticing that, mom and dad, or mom or dad is maybe starting to slip a little bit, or they've got some health issues that we found out about at the Thanksgiving table that they hadn't told us about before. And so about this time of the year, it's interesting because it happens every single year. Some families reach out to us with, I'm concerned about my dad and what should we do? I think he's starting to slip a little bit. And what made me think about this year is I have become a fan of a new country musician by the name of Zach Bryan. If you haven't heard Zach Bryan's stuff, he's fantastic. I really think, the music he's producing, he's one of the best songwriters that I've found in a long time. And he's got this song that I found called Billy Stay. And if you have not heard this song, I would imagine most of you have probably not heard the song Billy Stay. I encourage you to find it. You can find it on, Apple or iTunes, or I listen to Amazon Music, but you can find it. Just go to YouTube. You'll find the song called Billy Stay. And the song is, he is singing from the perspective of an elderly wife of a husband with dementia. And it's kind of a sad song, but in a way it's also kind of a beautiful song. But there's a couple of lessons in here, I think, that are really pretty insightful for what I see in my practice when someone does have dementia. And the way the song goes is you don't really know what's going on at the beginning. She talks about, Billy, tell me the story from 1965 with the flowers. And then she goes on to say, Billy, our children have children. How could it be? And then she says 90 years is nothing to some kids like us. But then when we get to the chorus, she says, Billy, stay a while. You've been slipping in and out. Tell me about that girl you dreamed about. Tell me of the lovers who once were. Tell me about that girl and how you loved her, right? And so what she's encouraging Billy to do is to tell their own love story, right? Billy is clearly at this point, you kind of understand what's going on. Billy doesn't have great short-term memory. He really doesn't know what's going on. And he does remember time from his youth, which is very common with dementia patients, right? They don't know what happened 15 minutes ago, but you ask them about 1965 and they can tell you all about it. And it's the difference between short-term memory and long-term memory and the emotional impact of those memories and whatnot. And so Billy in this song is recanting the early days of this family's love story, and how he bought her flowers and they eloped, and about, tell me about that girl you dreamed about. So she's asking Billy to tell the story about herself, which is like touching and emotional and kind of sad, but also like she's doing a beautiful job in this song of being a caregiver, because one of the mistakes that caregivers often make when someone has this thing going on is they fight it. And one of the things that I have found you probably should not say to somebody with dementia, and it's hard, but we should probably not say things like, don't you remember? We already talked about this. And from time to time, I see this when I'm working with a client, and maybe there is a dementia situation going on, and I'm talking to the family, and dad is in the room or mom is in the room, and we're having a conversation, and they'll say, "Dad, we already talked about this. Don't you remember, Dad? We already talked about this, Dad." It's not Dad's fault that he doesn't remember that we already talked about this. In the same way that somebody with another medical condition can't help the fact that they need the medication, right? I mean, it's just a piece, but there's this urge that people have when someone has the diagnosis that they want to fight it because they want dad to be better, but dad's not better, and he's not going to be better. And any amount of "Dad, don't you remember" is just going to cause angst between you and the person with the disease. It's just going to cause them stress. It's going to cause you stress. And oftentimes I have found and learned from people in this business that there's no point in fighting this. It just creates stress and anxiety. And so the fact that she's not trying to get Billy in this song to tell recent stories, she's just supporting what he's able to do and keeping him happy, because he's clearly happy living in the memory of 1965. And then at the end of the song, he ultimately does pass away. And she says, "Maybe heaven for you is 1965 with my hair in your face on a long drive," right? And it's just a beautiful song. And I encourage you to check it out and check out the rest of Zach Bryan's music. I think he's fantastic. But I was listening to the song, and this actually reminded me of a personal story. So my wife's family has this really cute story where her late great grandmother, who we all affectionately called Mimi, got married late in life to her high school sweetheart. They got married in their 80s, and he they had both had prior marriages that ended one way or the other, and then he approached her, and they got together, and he confessed that he always had feelings for her, and they had been prom dates. Now, they were prom dates, and then their life got interrupted by World War II. And Rex, which was his name, went off to the war. They parted ways. They hadn't talked to each other in decades. And then he looked her up sometime later. They end up falling in love again in their 80s and getting married, which is kind of a beautiful situation. And time went on, and Mimi eventually, she eventually started having dementia, and her memory started to fade. And Rex was her primary caregiver. And my wife, one day, we have this thing that we like to do in our family and for our estate planning clients, where we record personal stories. I feel like the stories that we can pass on to the next generations are just as important as the dollars that we can pass on to the next generations. And we live in a period of time where, digital video, the video that your phone can create, is the first time in human history that you can record a story right now. You could take out your phone, you could pause this podcast, and you could take out your phone, and you could record a story about your high school sweetheart. And that video will exist in a way that your great grandchildren will be able to watch it, because there will always be a free MP4 player. Like it's not going to get brittle. The VCR is not going to break. This is all cloud-based. And if you do this correctly and you store it correctly, you can pass on beautiful stories to future generations. And I think it's really important planning. And I think that type of thing is going to be very commonplace for future generations. But I got to get my baby boomers in front of comfortable in front of a camera. But anyway, so my wife is recording Rex and Mimi telling their story one day, and Rex is telling the story because Mimi is slipping, and how they fell in love later in life. And Mimi said, "What a beautiful story. How lucky for them." Right. So Mimi had forgotten her own love story. But when she heard it, it brought her joy, and it reminds me of the song Billy Stay, and how that's just a beautiful thing to be able to just live in the moment that the person with dementia is living in. Don't try to fight the thing. And so wanted to sort of share that tip, and because this time of year, as we're spending time with our family, somebody listening to the show is going to find that mom or dad or aunt or uncle is slipping a little bit. And what do we do? So I wanted to give you some more tips. So the first tip there is, don't fight it. Live in the time period that they're living in. If they're telling stories from their youth, don't try to bring them back to today. The youth is a happier place than today. A couple of other things, and this is the work that we do in our office with our social workers. So in my law firm, we do wills and trusts, which is generally what I speak about on the radio show, trying to persuade you to, get off the couch and do a will or a trust. But the other type of case that we do is about a half a dozen or 10 times a month, we're contacted by a family where someone's not well, and there's typically an older person who is unhealthy, and it may be dementia, it may be some other thing, and the family's looking at care options, and the family is trying to understand this whole Medicare, Medicaid system, and we do this sort of healthcare crisis management with our clients. And we do a bunch of that. And so in our office, we have a social worker who helps with placement decisions and helping people understand the difference between, say, like a personal care home and a skilled nursing facility, and how you can pay for these things, because unfortunately it's all very confusing, particularly for a family that doesn't have a plan going into this. And now the adult children are thrust into a situation where we got to figure out what's right or wrong for mom. And there's this like role reversal, right? So parent becomes child, essentially. And it's a confusing world here where the adult children have not lived in it yet, right? And so we got to help people figure this stuff out. And so I just want you to know that service is available. But one of the things that we do help our clients understand is the differences in different types of residential care settings. Okay, so I want to sort of just give you a cursory review of this. So if you've got somebody in your world who may be looking at needing long-term care in the not too distant future, it's important that you understand that there's a couple of different types of residential communities in Pennsylvania. There's a thing called an independent living facility. Now, independent living is supposed to be the person can live independently. Now, there's usually someone there around the clock that can help with certain things, but the person really doesn't need care at the independent living facility. But then what's interesting is a lot of independent living facilities, you can have paid caregivers come in to help take care of the person. So the community itself is not in the care providing business necessarily, but a lot of people who are living in independent living facilities can have privately paid contracted care providers coming into the place. Okay. Sort of next step up on the care continuum is what is licensed typically as a personal care home in Pennsylvania. There are also some things called assisted living facilities in Pennsylvania, but most of these places are licensed as what are called personal care homes. So a personal care home, now mom or dad needs some help, right? Usually with a couple of the activities of daily living. The facility is not providing nursing care, but they're doing the laundry, and they're doing the meal prep, and they're getting the person to the meal on time. And some of the personal care homes, they're helping with bathing and toileting and different things. Some of the personal care homes have licensed memory care units. So in the memory care unit, now you've got people with more advanced dementia in a locked unit with people trained to provide for people with those ailments. So a lot of people, I think that if the person needs to go to the quote unquote old folks home, we're going straight to a skilled nursing facility, but not necessarily so. And within some of these personal care homes, what's occurred in the last 15, 20 years is the level of acuity of care that these communities can provide is higher than it used to be. And so people that used to go to skilled nursing facilities, some of them are being provided for in personal care homes. Okay. Then the next step up is a skilled nursing facility. And a skilled nursing facility is a different license. And now we've got nurses available. Now we're doing medication administration. Now we're doing the physical therapy. We're doing different things in the skilled nursing facility than what was being done in the personal care home. So there's a higher acute care of need here, need for acute care rather, that that is not well provided for in a personal care home. Now, my experience has been there's some overlap here. If a lot of people with dementia you could take the person to a personal care home, and the personal care home will say, yes, she's appropriate, we can take care of her. And if you took her to a skilled nursing facility, they would say, yes, she's appropriate, we can take care of her. Okay, so now at first glance, personal care home might be the place that the family wants to go if we're looking at this thing from a financial perspective, because generally speaking, personal care homes can be cheaper than skilled nursing facilities. Now, at some of the higher tiers of care, they've got like step up levels of care and attention that they're going to provide to the senior. The lines get a little closer on the price tag. So at first glance, it would appear that strictly from a financial standpoint, if we're trying to make mom's resources work for a while, maybe we should go to a personal care home. It's a few grand less a month, right? But that's at first glance. The major difference between a personal care home and a skilled nursing facility, though, is that Medicaid will pay for a skilled nursing facility, where personal care homes are pretty much private pay, right? Absent long-term care insurance, you're pretty much private pay in a personal care home. But in a skilled care facility, now we can get Medicaid to pay. Now, Medicaid has its asset and income limitations, and you got to work through those, which is what we do for a lot of our clients. But it's possible to get people eligible for Medicaid to pay for the nursing home, even after the person is in the nursing home. Now, there's this whole 5-year clock thing, and there's these tactics, but I can tell you that it is possible to get somebody eligible for Medicaid and protect assets without going broke, even after somebody's been admitted to the nursing home. So if you're in this situation where there's a lot of people that I think are paying $9,000, $10,000 a month in a personal care home, where the senior could go to a skilled nursing facility, but the family doesn't want to move the person to a skilled nursing facility, even though they may need that level of care, because it costs $4 or $5 grand more a month. But what the family doesn't know is that, yeah, but we can get the person eligible for Medicaid benefits. And now it goes from $14,000 a month to the monthly income, $2,000-$3,000 a month. And we actually can stretch the money longer. And so, unfortunately, this stuff is all very confusing, and families make mistakes, which is why, you can't make healthcare decisions. Unfortunately, this government rule book that we have in this country is so darn confusing for seniors. It's so confusing. And families make mistakes all the time. But there are opportunities if you work with folks who know what they're doing. But you cannot make care decisions in a bubble. You cannot just simply make, dad needs this care, let's go to this place, because you have to consider the financial ramifications of that decision. In particular, you have to consider the financial ramifications of that decision if there's a healthy spouse still around, because the state's rules will require the family to essentially go broke if one spouse goes to a skilled nursing facility. Forget the other spouse. I mean, they let her keep some money, but it's not enough. And so we cannot just make care decisions in a bubble. But I can tell you, in particular with the married case, there are some real opportunities to get the person eligible for Medicaid without any real out-of-pocket in the skilled nursing facility. Well, without any, what I'll say, going broke type of out-of-pocket in the skilled nursing facility. And so don't just make the assumption because a personal care home's monthly bill looks cheaper at first that's the end of the story. There's more to it than that. And so that's how we do our elder law cases, is we bring people in for a free consultation. So if you find somebody in this situation, give us a call at 724-841-1393 or go to sechlerlawfirm.com, and we will give your family a free consultation to help you on the journey of charting this thing out. You get to meet Megan, our social worker, who can help you understand this stuff better than I can explain it, certainly better than I can explain it in a limited time radio show, but help you understand what is the right thing for you or for the senior you're caring for. And then I also want to give you a couple of legal tips. So the first tip was, don't fight the dementia diagnosis. I mean, you can fight it with medication, you can fight it with treatment, but don't use the words "don't you remember." Second is understand the care community. If you've got time to take time to tour some places, go tour some places. And I just laid out for you independent living, personal care, skilled care. And I also want you to know there's another type of thing called a continuing care retirement community. Now, the continuing care retirement community, they've got all those facilities on one campus. Typically, there's the independent living, and then across the grass there is the personal care home, and then down the sidewalk is the skilled nursing facility. And these places are licensed separately, but these places can have you sign some financial contracts that the other places don't make you sign. This is where you get into big down payments going in and different complicated arrangements. And what I want you to know about those arrangements is they are complicated. And you probably need the help of a professional to understand the contract and what's a great idea and what's not a great idea. So I would encourage you to have those nursing home contracts reviewed if you have the opportunity to. Legal technical tips. So one, if you were at Thanksgiving this week and you noticed mom was slipping, but mom still, in your opinion, has her faculties, she's just losing the car keys and forgetting that she already told that story today. Probably time to get some legal work in place, okay? Because once the person has lost the ability to understand what they're signing, we cannot sign new documents. So now's the time to get the documents in place that if this thing gets worse later, at least we've got the right tools in place from a legal standpoint to manage the situation. And so if we're at that point, then I think it's time to probably get some documents signed. Now, how do you start that conversation? Well, I don't think I think you start the conversation and meet the person where they are and don't make it accusational, but just asking the questions. Hey, what's the plan if something happens to you or dad? What's the plan? Who's in control? Mom, do you need help with the checkbook? Do you need things? Because starting that conversation about how can we help you rather than more accusational, you're slipping and you need to do some legal work. One of the things that's very common with dementia patients is they get very defensive in suspect. Okay. So I've worked with adult child caregivers of seniors with dementia over the years. And I can tell you flat out, I've worked with people who are angels. They are sincerely disrupting their lives to take care of mom. They have nothing but the best interest of mom at heart. And dad is convinced that the child is trying to take all their money, right? The child's not. The child is doing the right things, saying the right things, and it's not fake, right? I've been in those situations too with the people that are taking advantage of the situation. But even people who are not taking advantage of the situation, sometimes with dementia, the person that's impacted, the person with dementia, is very suspicious of everything going on around them. And they think that maybe the daughter is trying to get the money or whatever. And so this can be very tricky. And so I think that it's more from a support standpoint, how can we help you, rather than I need to take control. Okay. So another tip is, we got to get legal documents in place, powers of attorney, trust, wills, all of those things. This is a great time then, if mom or dad still has capacity to get the education you need, come to one of our estate planning workshops where you learn about all these different tools, and then we can get the proper paperwork in place for you. And there's a thing to just be aware of here, is that people with dementia, one of the things that they are grasping for is control, right? And they are intimidated and scared of the adult children taking control. Don't take my car keys. Now, at some point in time, just in the interest of safety, mom or dad needs to stop driving. But this is where the don't take my car keys thing comes from. It's not about the car keys. It's about control. And so I encourage you, if you're working with somebody with dementia, to have them feel like they have some control over things. Keep mealtime at the same time. Don't confuse them with that. Ask them what they would like to have for dinner. Continue to help them make their favorite meals. Continue to assist them doing some things as long as you can, rather than them doing it by themselves. Because there's a palpable sense, and I don't know that a person with dementia can put it into words like this, but there's a palpable sense that they are concerned about losing control, particularly your type A personalities, where they're used to being the one in charge. And now there's this thing that's impacting their ability to make decisions. And then the family's around taking those decisions off of the person, and they get suspicious and they get scared and they get unhappy. And so this is a challenging time, but try to come up with creative ways to continue to have the person with dementia have some control of their day to day. And when they make a decision, even if it's inconvenient for you, sometimes they're caregivers. Sometimes you got to go with it. If dad wants to take a shower, and it would be more convenient for you if dad took a shower in 2 hours, just that element of allowing them to have control of that time can make all the difference in the rest of the person's day with regard to their happiness. So these are just some things. Now, I got to tell you, I've never actually been a caregiver for somebody with dementia. I've just been around a lot of dementia, being an elder law attorney. And so those are just some things that I've sort of picked up over the years. I hope you found them valuable. If you need some help, give us a call, 724-841-1393, or check us out at sechlerlawfirm.com, SECHLER lawfirm.com. And remember, this show is for your education and information. This show is not legal advice. If you have a legal problem, you probably should get some legal advice. Give us a call or check us out. We would be happy to help you. I want to thank you for listening this weekend. Take care, and we'll be right back here next week. Thanks a lot.